Begin the current Daf the Shabbos Daf. We begin on the top of the Amud. We continue with the next mission of the series of these Mishnayos, the title of Perek Hazar, continuing regarding the Malacha of throwing on Shabbos. Hashir's co-sponsor because of Necheskel, Toranikim, Daf Achaim, and to everybody who's joining us. Some ideas we're going to speak about in today's Daf is that Ol Chiyavei Chatois, very interesting halacha, to be Chayav Akar Machatas is only possible if the beginning and the end was done b'shkaga. Only then you can be chayav chatas. So it has to be when you started the malacha and when the malacha ended had to have been that it was by mistake. If let's say any of them were, you had a mazid, you became aware in middle, that removes the shkaga. It's not going to be chayav unless you have the whole thing. Now, this slide is actually showing that if you have a yediyah l'chatzi shir, there is an opinion that holds that that's not considered significant. And if you become aware in middle, that should not interrupt, and that it's still going to be considered as, if you forget about it, that's still going to be one act of shkaga to be chayev, because you're going to combine them, because the awareness in the between, the yediyah, l'chatzi shir, is not going to be considered as a yediyah. This we're going to learn about what's called machshavta b'shabbos le'makom. Even if, let's say, something would not be considered an area, we know that for hanacha you have to have a makom dalal adal, it has to be landing on the area 4 tefachim. Let's say it's not 4 tefachim, but you intended for it to be there, your machshava could make it considered as a significant makom, and it would be considered as a hanacha. We're going to start the next Perek Habayna, that's going to say one of the lamatas malachas is building. Kama yivna b'yichayev. We're going to discuss how much is considered building to be chayev, and the Mishnah is going to tell us abayna kolshu, that even for a minimal amount, the Gemara is going to discuss what's significant about a minimal amount that would be considered as the malacha of bayna. This we're going to discuss 3 cases of Rabbi Shmuel. That's a machlekes if you're chayev because of bayna, because of building, or Shmuel is going to say because of makar patish, and we'll see one of the cases Rabbi Yechon agrees with Shmuel that it's because of makar patish, which means that when you finish something off, that's called makar patish. And we're going to also discuss that malacha on the base. Additionally, the concept of eina nis b'makom ashiris, which I remember when I heard about Kamish Mishkan Yecheskel, it says when they do it all the way. They do it right. So the Havdal in the Mishkan was the same way in the Beis Hamikdash, that they don't do it chatzi. You know what I'm saying? There's no poverty in the place of opulence, of affluence. They do it all the way. That's a concept we'll see in today's Daf. Okay, we begin the current Daf Beis, top line of the Amud, where we continue with this malacha of this Perek Hazarik, one of the parts of the malacha of Haitzah of Hazarik, or throwing something. Someone's throwing Hazarik, someone throws by mistake in Rosh Hashanah, Daled Amos on Shabbos. Now the Nisker, he remembers that it's Shabbos. So after the stone had left miyadai from his hand before it lands. So here it is, he's throwing it, and mid throw he remembers, oi, Shabbos. That's part. Now continues the Mishnah. Kol ta'achar. The Gemara's assumption in the beginning is that this is all one case. So after this person threw it, and he remembered mid-throw, then someone else actually went and caught it. So this is what's known as shnaim shasur. 2 people are doing a malacha together. For example, as Rashi explains, it's not that it just lands in the person's hand. This guy jumps in and he catches it. Or, similarly, kol tekelev. If a dog jumps and catches it in its mouth, where here, even if it actually would be thrown and would just land in the dog's mouth, unless you intended it, as we'll see in the Gemara, that's not considered a hanacha, because it's not a makam daled. The mouth of a dog is not an area of 4 tvachim, which would be required for the makam of the hanacha. Let's say he throws it, and again, mid-throw, he remembers it, and then it actually gets burnt in the fire. So pater, he's going to be pater. Similarly, let's say Zark Las Chabur. Let's say this guy is very upset at this other guy. Says, oh, you took my seed in shul, whatever it is. He goes, he's throwing something at him in the street, and Bein Ba'adam Be'behema, whether he wants to make a wound on him, whether it's an animal or a person, the Niskar Chalenas Chabur, mid-throw, he's like, oy vey, it's Shabbos. What am I doing over here? So then Pater is going to be Pater. Why? It says the Mishnah like this. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Kol Chiyah B'chatois, all things that are liable for chatos, Einan Chayavin, you're not liable. Ashet Chilasan B'Seifa and Shkaga. Has to be that the beginning and the end, like here and Anacha, from the beginning to end, from your action, has to be an error. But let's say Chilasan Shkaga B'Seifa and Zad. Let's say in the beginning, yeah, you made a mistake. But at the end, you remembered, before it landed, you remember, oh, it's Shabbos. So that's not anymore by mistake. You have an awareness. Or the opposite. Chilasan Zad B'Seifa and Shkaga. Let's say in the beginning you had an awareness, but at the end, you forgot about it. Then Paturin, you're going to be exempt from a karmachatas It has to be the beginning and the end of your action was an error. If either one of them was aware, which that's b'mezid, that's intentional, then you're not chayav b'chatas. Chatas is only if you are unaware from the beginning to the end. Now the Gemara has the following question on the halacha of the Mishnah. You said in the Mishnah, this case, you said that the person threw the thing. There's two parts. He remembered about it, and additionally, it didn't land, so to speak. He didn't do a hanacha, either because someone else jumped in and caught it, or the dog, it went into the dog's mouth, or got burnt in the fire. Neither of these are a hanacha. Here because someone else did it. Here because it's not a makam dalar. Here also it didn't land on anything. It got burnt before it landed. So the Gemara asked the following question. Hanacha, now it sounds like that if it did land after Dalad Amis and Rosh Hashanah, that Chayiv would be liable even though he had an awareness between his throwing and the landing. Because you're telling me it's one case. So he threw it, he remembered, but not only that, he didn't land. Sounds like, okay, but you didn't have these three things. If it did land, then even though he had an awareness mid-throw, then he would be Chayiv when it lands. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? It's not V'halei Nisker. What do you mean? But he remembered mid-throw. And it's not, the Sefer of the Mishnah contradicts what you're saying in the Reisha. The Sefer of the Mishnah says, Kol Chayiv b'chatoi is all liabilities of b'chatas in Chayiv and not liable, Ashtei Tchilasim v'Sefer Shkaga, until the beginning and the end of Shkaga. The Reisha's case doesn't fit in. The Reisha's case, which anyways sounds interesting as we'll explain shortly, but it's that, again, he had an awareness mid-throw, but not only that, it also didn't land. Sounds like, but if it did land, why are you saying this, right? Sounds like if it did land, you did a hanacha, it was a makam dalad, then you would be chayiv. How could you be chayiv? Mid-throw, you remembered. That's going to be tchilas and shkaga, but safe and b'mezid, because you had an awareness mid-throw.
That person who caught is not going to land in his hand?
Yeah, but that's not considered landing in his hand. It's not considered quote hanacha. Great question. It's because he jumped in and he caught it. He jumped in, he took it. It's not your hanacha. Put it this way.
Throw it to him.
If you throw it to him and you're intending to throw it to him, and then he catches it, yeah, then that's hanacha. But when someone else jumps in, he's doing the hanacha, not you. Shnaim shasu, when two people do it together, you're not going to be chai. But it sounds like if, let's say someone did not jump in, let's say just landed on the street, you would be chayiv. Why would you be chayiv? But you had a yediyah. You became aware in the beginning. It's safe from b'mezid. So that's the Gemara's question. So that Rav Kahana, he says, Seifa, he says, you know what the Seifa is talking about? It's when the Seifa says, until the beginning and the end are shkaga, you're right, generally you don't need tchilas and b'seif and b'shkaga, as we see in the case of the Reisha. If it would land, even though you became aware middle, you would be chayiv. When do you need to have that the beginning and the end has to be b'shkaga? Generally, once it's out of your hand, it's okay. I don't care if you chap or not, if you became aware or not. Once you threw it and you were shkaga, you're shkaga. When did the Sefer need that the whole time, even until it lands, has to be all b'shkaga? That's asoin l'lachta. That's talking about a clamp, which we don't have a picture of this, but it's a small piece of wood that it's like almost like a U, and it's doubled over, and they use it by the donkeys where they carry the vessels of wine, where they put that piece into two ropes. So like if you imagine on the top of the back of the donkey, this U-shaped piece of metal, and you have the ropes hanging from that piece, and the flasks are hanging from the sides of the donkeys. You see the picture of the donkeys like schlepping things on the sides, these flasks of wine. It's all because you have this clasp, umisna, with a rope. In other words, the seifa is only when you're throwing this clasp that's attached to a small rope, as it normally is when they carry the flasks of wine on the back of the donkey. Now, what's the case talking about? Case talking about the guy's holding a rope. So it is similar to this picture, but just not exactly the clasp that the Gemara is talking about. But he's throwing the rope. Now, when he remembers mid-throw, what's unique about this case is that it was in his hand to hold back the rope and to stop the throwing of the clasp that it shouldn't land, because it's the rope still in his hand. That's why the Sefer said, if you're going to have a tchilas ishkag, meaning when you started throwing it, you didn't chap it shab, you didn't realize. And at the end you became aware before it landed, that then you're going to be potter, because your throw didn't finish yet. You're still holding on to it. But the case of when you throw an object, like of the Reisha, and you remember mid-throw, who cares that you remember? You can't pull it back anymore. It's all a shkaga. Your whole throw is a shkaga. That you chap middle, that when it's middle, doesn't make a difference. Has nothing to do with your action anymore. Now, so why did you say why do you then say in the Reisha, when you discuss the case, that he remembered? What's the significance of saying that he remembered? Recalling in middle doesn't mean anything anyway. Why are you mentioning that? You're right, it's all about if you did Anocha or not. You didn't do Anocha, so you can be Potter. If you did Anocha like the Gemara's Dikas, you would be Chayiv. So why are you talking about this? Says Rashi, according to what the Gemara is saying right now, it's saying a Chiddush. Even though you chapped, that's not going to exempt you from a Chatas unless Kol Ta'achar Oikel. Because your chapping doesn't mean anything. You're becoming aware, it's not significant. Who cares? It's out of your hands already. So it's not going to affect your action. But the case of the Sefer is talking about, the case of the Sefer is talking about where you had this, where it was still in your hand. And therefore, if you remember mid-throw, it is significant. Your throw is not done yet, because you could still pull it back. So that's the case where we're saying that you would be chayiv if you only tchilased to say from Mishkaga, because if you were b'mezid, your action had an element of b'mezid, you could have pulled it back when you became aware. You didn't, so therefore it's not a regular shkaga. Shkaga has to be totality a shkaga. Now that's a regular object. Once it's out of your hand, it's all a shkaga, even if you become aware of middle, because what shaykh is you're not even connected to your action anymore. But if it's a rope that connected to this class, then even mid-throw, your awareness is significant because you could pull it back. That's the case where it has to be tchilasim b'seif and b'shkaga. And the Reisha doesn't have to be, because it is all b'shkaga already from the beginning. Even mid-ear, it's still considered shkaga, even if you become aware. And that's what we're saying. It's only kol ta'achar that you're going to be potter. But if it wasn't kol ta'achar, it was hanacha, you'd be chayiv.
Why is he at all chayiv? It's still in the sand.
Oh, no, the Gemara's kasha. Fact the Gemara. Good question. Exactly. Says the Gemara, lechta masna. This case that you're saying regarding the clasp and the rope, it's still in his hand. Even if it would all be b'shagig, you would not be chayiv because there's no zrika. You didn't throw anything. It never left your hand. So therefore, how could you say that that's going to be the case? And you're right. The Gemara says, so you have to say it's a whole different case. It's kegoyin shenisgavan lasas chabura. This case that we're describing of the sefer with the rope, it's not about the hamalacha of haitzah, of zrika, of Shabbos. It's where you're throwing something you intended to make a wound. So in the beginning, when you started throwing this thing at this guy, where you wanted to hurt this guy, that's the case we're talking about. Where in the beginning it was a shkaga, and then he remembered before it hit the guy, that he said, oh, it's Shabbos, I can make a chabur. You're not allowed to make a chabur in someone. So we're talking about it's a rope with a clasp, but it's talking about where he intended to make a wound. Now, this that he recalls that he's going to be potter is because he could pull it back. Not this picture. This picture, let's imagine this was a rope. Where he could pull it back, comes out when he was at the end, he realized that's Sefer Zadin. Because if he wouldn't remember, he would be chayiv, even though it's attached to his hand. You know why over there it's different, even though it's attached to his hand? Because the liability is not because of throwing, it's because of making a wound. So we don't care that it's still oide b'yadai. So the case that we're talking about in the Sefer, that it has to be tchilas and sefer b'shkaga, is talking about a rope with this clasp, but it's not requiring zrika of hitzah of mavidal ramas b'shazrav. Liability is because you're giving someone a clap, you know, make a wound. It's creating that blood's coming out. That's forbidden to be done on Shabbos. That's the case of the sefer that we said it has to be tchilas and sefer b'shkaga. Because if, let's say, before it hits him, you remember, no, so that's not tchilas and sefer b'shkaga because you chap the middle. We don't care that you're still holding on to it. As long as you're making chabur, you're violating the malacha of Shabbos. That's the case, it has to be. But again, the ratio doesn't have to be 7 b'shkaga. That's why we said that only if kol ta'acha, kol tekel, and shalanisra, you can be part of it. You never did anacha. Says the Gemara, no, this is also not a good interpretation. Because hanamitanina. This was explicitly said in the Mishnah. You cannot tell me that the Sefer, when it says this halacha of zehaklal, is coming to include this case. Because the Mishnah says, hazar glas is chabur. The Mishnah said, someone throws something to make a wound, bein ba'adam, bein b'behema, whether in a person, whether in an animal, v'niskat shleinas chabur. He remembers before he made a wound, that part is going to be examined. So obviously when the Mishnah at the end, which we're asking from, that says zehaklal, is coming to tell you something else. Can't come to tell you the case of making a wound because the Mishnah already discussed the case of making a wound. So Elam Rabbi gives a different interpretation. He says, you're right. When the Mishnah says Zahaklal, that we said that it has to be Tchilas and B'Seif and B'Shkaga, it's talking about B'Maver. When someone is carrying something 4 Amos and Mishus Arab, and he recalls before he went an entire Dalet Amos, where then he could have stopped where he remembered, that's where it's the same idea where it's biyadei to stop it. He didn't walk the talaramis. Then it's where he's going to be pater. But in the case of throwing, that's what we said. Throwing itself, you're not going to be pater. Even if you remembered, it doesn't make a difference. It's out of your hand already. It's only going to be pater if you have kol ta'achar, kol tekel, which isn't a shenisrafal. But the Gemara asks them this too. How can you say zaklal is when you're carrying it, and therefore that's why it has to be tchilas and said in mishkaga? But if zaklal the ketani, this is the rule azrika ketani. It's going back on what the Mishnah just had previously said. The Mishnah was only talking about zrika. We are throwing an object, we are throwing to make a wound, and if you tell me that in general when you're coming to throw something where it left your hand, you're not going to be exempt when you remember because it's not significant anymore, how could you say regarding that? And this is the rule. This is the rule of what? Not of throwing. This is a rule only when you carry. Throwing, even if you remember before it lands, you're still good. You tell me it has no significance. It's only when you carry where you could stop. That's what's significant. How could you say the Zaklal is a case that the Mishnah is not even talking about? So Elam Rava, rather, this is where we have finally the Gemara's conclusion. Rava says that the Reisha is actually talking about two different cases. Tarti Katani, it's two cases. We were reading it up until now as one case. He says, no, it's two cases. Hazayrik, if someone throws an object, and he remembers after it left his hand, so that's what we're saying, that it's not in his hand, or inami, or even if it left his hand. That's going to be the chiddush we're going to see of this interpretation. Or loy nisker, he does not remember, but the kol ta'achar, but someone else caught it. I called the caleb or dog caught it. Oishin got burned. Pot is going to be exempt. And that's where afterwards we say zahaklal, which comes to include also carrying dalaramis and mishus haram. So you're right. The Gemara is saying a chiddush. Rav is saying that the halacha of nisker me'achar sheyatzim yadai would actually exempt, even though you can't pull it back. The fact that you remember in middle would make you potter because it's not tchilas and v'seif and mishkaga. Before it landed, before it hit the guy, you remembered, so it is still mesachas to you, and therefore you're going to be potter. And then it says a different case. Nothing to do with remembering. If someone else caught it, or the dog caught it, or they got burnt, you didn't do the whole malacha because it was intercepted, and therefore, those are two either cases. Both of them, you didn't do the entire malacha, wasn't chalas and b'shkaga in order to be potter. Now, Rav Ashi, who is the next interpretation, agrees with these two halachas, but he gives a different interpretation of what the halacha is Mishnah. He says, Rav Ashi says that actually the Mishnah is discussing one case, but he gives a qualification, he called what's called chasur metzur, which Taisa explains doesn't really mean to say there's words actually missing. It's just saying that in the understanding, it's like as if you have to insert words, but it's really one case. This is what the Mishnah is saying. Hazarik, if someone throws an object, and he recalls before, once it left his hand, before it landed, and you're right, kol ta'achar, kol tekel b'shenisva needs also the second element of that a dog or someone else or got burnt, only then pot is going to be pot. But hanacha, as the Gemara originally made the dig, if it does land, chayiv is going to be chayiv. What do you mean, how are you going to be chayiv? So that's what he explains that the Mishnah has a qualification, like so to speak, chsur mechsur. But medva moment we say this, that you're only going to be potter if someone else catches it, but if someone else doesn't catch it, it does land, even though you remembered you're going to be chayiv, that's shechazer v'shachach. These are like the words that are not really there in the Mishnah. It's talking about where you then subsequently forgot a second time before it landed. So it is going to be tchilas of a sefer mishkaga. Because although in the middle you became aware, but then you forgot again. So the kira and anacha were both b'shayki. Now, so wait a second. Why even mentioning the idea that you remembered in the middle? That's a chiddush. To say that even though you have an awareness in the middle, you're still going to be chayiv because the fact that you have an awareness in the middle is not significant because since you can't pull it back anyway, and you end up having a shkaga, so that's going to be considered tchilas b'sefer mishkaga because you did the akira and you did the hanacha, and therefore that doesn't change the halacha. But you're right. If he didn't go ahead and then forget again, potter you would be exempt. Because all liabilities of chatos, you're not liable until you have the error in the beginning and the end, and then it comes out that the ratio is just like the sefer. So again, the two interpretations of the Gemara was either we're talking about two separate cases. Rava holds that yes, just having an awareness in the middle would invalidate the chiyuv for the chatas. You would not be chayiv because it wouldn't be tchilas and sefer mishkaga because you had an awareness in the middle. It became bemezet, so to speak. You became deliberate. You became aware of it. So that's one p'tur. And then other p'tur is even if you did not become aware simply because you did not have anacha. Rav Ashi says that it's one case and that what happens is that when are you going to be potter? when you had an awareness in the middle, only if someone else catches it, is when you were chaz b'shachach. Since you had the tchila was b'shagi and the sefer b'shachach, and the chiddush is that even though you had an awareness in the middle, no, that would not say that you're going to be remove the liability for a chatas, because that itself is not significant, because you had the tchila and the sefer b'shachach. That's what we're saying. You're only going to be potter if someone else goes and catches it. But if someone else didn't catch it, you actually would be chayiv because it was tchila b'sefer b'shachach. Now we continue with the Gemara that says the halacha, the Mishnah, Zaklal. We said this is the rule. It said kol chiyuv b'chatayis v'chulu. We said all liabilities for chatayis are not going to be chayiv until you have tchilas and b'sefer b'shkaga, which we said about as long as the beginning and the end is b'shkaga. We said even if there's yediyah in the middle, and that's what we're actually going to discuss similarly right now, you're going to be chayiv for the act of throwing. So we had the following discussion, which really, just to introduce what we're going to be discussing, is going to be negayah for machlekes tanoim. There's halacha, the melach of ksiva is only if you write 2 letters. That's the minimum measurement for the melach of ksiva. Now, what happens if in the middle of writing, you remember after the aleph, oh yeah, Shabbos, and then you forget again, you write beis. Now, the reason what that is, because to be liable, you have to do something what's called behelam echad, one lapse of awareness. The question is a yediyah lachatzi shir considered a yediyah? Which means to say that if you remember a middle, is that going to, usually a yediyah divides. So let's say someone he made a mistake and he did a certain aver and became aware. And then again he forgets about it, he does it. So he's going to have another chatas because yediyah and awareness creates it separates, even if it's the same aver. So then the question is awareness in between what's called a chatzi shir, because you didn't do a whole avera, the whole avera is only with 2 letters, is that going to be considered separation? Gamliel holds you're going to be chayiv because no, yediyah is not significant for a chatzi shir. So if let's say you didn't know, then you became aware, let's say midway, which is before you write the second later, and then you forget again, so that's can be considered as if you did it all in one lapse of awareness, because a yediyah for chatzi shir is not really significant because what did you become aware of? You didn't become aware of any aver you did. You didn't do the shir with aver. So therefore you're going to be chayiv as if you did both in one lapse of awareness. Chamza, you can be put because no, yesh yediyah l'chatzi shir, which means to say that yes, since you became aware in the middle, so it's separating the 2. You never did a full avera because it's separating the 2. That's machlekes Gamliel and the Chacham. Now, what the Gemara discusses the case that seemingly should be divided along those same lines of machlekes Gamliel and the Chacham. Says the Gemara, Idma, we learned as follows: Shtei amas b'shagi. Let's say someone's in the middle, he's carrying Rosh Hashanah. The first 2 amas he does was by mistake. Remember, the shear of carrying Rosh Hashanah is 4 amas. The first 2 amas he nechat that he's carrying. Then shtei amas b'mezid. Then after he carried the first 2 amas, he became aware. He has that tissue, that nut, whatever he has in his pocket, in the next 2 amas. Then shtei amas b'shagi. Then he actually forgot about it again. He got distracted and he forgot again the next 2 amas. So we have machlokes. What's the halacha going to be? Now, before we go any further, it sounds like that this should be the machlokes of Chacham, because shagi became aware, and again shagi. So you did 2 amas of shagi, you did another 2 amas of shagi, but in the middle 2 amas you became aware. So isn't that the machlokes of Rabbi Leil and the Chacham? If you yesh yediyah l'chatzi shir or not? According to Rabbi Leil, that he says that ein yediyah l'chatzi shir, so then you'd be chayiv. According to Chacham, that yesh yediyah l'chatzi shir, you'd be potter. That was what seemingly should be the machlokes. But we have a machlokes on my wrong. Rabbi Mapati says you can be exempt. Rabbi Machai says Michai. And each one explains that the disputing Tanoic opinion would agree to him, as the Gemara explains. Rabbi Omar Pater, Rabbi says you're going to be Pater. A filler later on the Parakah Doma that he says Eini di lechatzi shir, that generally an awareness is not significant for half of the measurement. So you would think to say that here also you should be Pater because that you should be chayiv because the yediyah is not going to separate. Says no. Hasam over there, when you're writing 2 letters in 2 laps of awareness, is there. Mila says you chayiv. Why? Shiur, because when you finished the shir, when you wrote the second letter, which is the conclusion of the malach of ksiva, that was also b'shayge k'gamar. When you finished it, it was also in error. So the first one was in error, the second one was in error. There would just happen to have been the yediyah in the middle, but that's not significant. But over here, when the middle 2 amas, which they were done, they were done deliberately, the shir was concluded of the malacha of Maver Dalam Mishras Rabbim when you did the two of B'mezid, because that's when you carry Dalam Mishras Rabbim. So then, there he's not going to hold that you're going to be chayiv. He's going to agree that you're going to be patur. As the Gemara clarifies, what is the case that Rab is talking about? If you're throwing it, so then shaygiku. What do you mean? It also ended in error because you cannot pull it back mid-air, and since you subsequently forgot about it, so then you can be chayiv because the malacha was not concluded until it landed, which at the end was the last two amas, which was b'shkaga. Remember, the first two amas, I'm not sure if the guy's carrying or throwing it. First two amas, he didn't chap. Middle two amas, he became aware. And the last two amas, he again forgot. So if you're throwing it, so what do you mean? It's exactly what you're describing around Lil, that the beginning was b'shkaga, and then ended b'shkaga. Elabamav, the Gemara explains, no, we're talking about where he's carrying it. Since it was in his hand to stop at the end of the middle two amas, comes out that really the conclusion of the shiur of carrying was done b'mezid. That's why even Lil would agree that you're going to be patur. Because when does he say chayav? When it says any dilachat shiur, because it's not separating. So as long as the beginning was b'shogeg and the last thing was b'shogeg, so you can be chayav. Here it's not true. Here the last thing was actually chayav. Was the conclusion of the malacha was when you were b'mezid. So you're not going to be chayav. You carried another two amas b'shogeg, but that's like a separate malacha now. It's like a separate entity. You're carrying 4 amas, which was not sefer b'shogeg, was sefer b'mezid. And therefore, even Lee would agree in this case that you can be patur. That's what Rabba says. Rabba, he says chayiv. No, he says this case is going to be chayiv. He says afil Rabbanan. He says even according to the Rabbanan. He says this is just that picture that from Rava. We said that if it was that he threw it, so then that wouldn't be significant. But he says that you're talking about it was carried, and the same thing the Gemara is going to discuss right now with Rabba. Rabba Mechavi says you're going to be chayiv. Afafil Rabban, even called Rabban. The Amr Yeshidi Lechatzi that they say that there is awareness for a half of a measurement. So wait a second, if there is an awareness, that awareness should separate and you should be put. No, he says you can be chayiv. Because Hasam hu debiyadoi. There, in the case of writing, the person has it in his control not to write the second letter. So when you subsequently forget, it's like a new shagaga. It's not the conclusion of the first one, because you chabbed. Now you're writing again. That's a new writing. It wasn't like one act of writing. You could choose to write the second letter or not. Where it's not in his hand to pull it back once he remembers, as we're going to explain right now, because actually Rabbi explains it with throwing. So if it is all one shagaga, then then the Rabbanan would not say their opinion, and they would hold that ein yedi lechatzi shiur, and they would agree that you're going to be chayiv, because as the Gemara explains, what's the case of how Rabbi is explaining it? If you're carrying it, what do you mean? It is in his hand to stop. It is the same thing like writing a new letter. Rather, it's talking about the case of throwing, which Rashi explains something very important. Rabbi and Rava actually agree in the same halacha. It's only what's called mar machada b'lei pligi. It's just that one of them is talking about the case of throwing, one of them is talking about the case of carrying. When you're throwing it, everyone's going to agree that the end was b'shkaga. And when you're carrying it, everyone's going to agree that the end was b'mezid. So they're both saying the same thing, that Ramlil and the Rabbanan would agree that you can be chayiv or patur, depending on what the case is. If you're carrying it, everyone's going to agree that you're going to be patur. If you're throwing it, everyone's going to agree that you're going to be chayiv. Because when you're throwing it, the tchalasa in the sefer was b'shkaga, because you couldn't pull it back anyway. So it's different. Put it this way, essentially they're saying it's different in the case of writing. For both opinions, for Ramlil and for the Rabbanan, it's going to be different, because like we said, svaras by both of them, that either you could stop in middle, or that it's considered something like a separate act. In this case, it's not, and therefore we said that everyone's going to agree regarding the halachas. Rabbi and Rava not even disagreeing with themselves. They're just talking about different cases. Well, the one who says that you can be chayiv is talking about when you threw it. The one who says you can be patur is when you carried it, and therefore that's going to be even according to Gamliel or the Rabban. Now we continue with the halacha of the Mishnah. Amar Rabbah. That's going to be related to the halacha of the Mishnah. He says the following halacha. He says, Zarak b'nacha b'fi hakelb. If someone's throwing something and it lands in the mouth of the dog, oy b'fi hakivshin, or in the oven where it gets burnt in the fire before it lands, so then chayiv is going to be liable. Says the Gemara, how can you say this? Well, not time we learned in the Mishnah that says kol ta'achar kol ta'hakelb. If someone else, if it lands in the dog's mouth or someone else catches it, oy shenisafu, or gets burnt, patik mi patik. Like we said, because the dog's mouth doesn't have a makam dalad. Someone else jumping in is someone else did the hanacha. or if it gets burnt, it never landed. So how can you say that you're going to be chayiv? Says the Gemara, you're right. In the case of the Mishnah, is where a person did not intend to throw it in that place. So then if someone else is jumping in, just what someone had previously asked, so then someone else is jumping in, so he's doing that nothing. But yeah, you intended to throw it to the guy and the catches, or you intended to throw it into the guy's mouth, then you would be chayiv. That's the Gemara says, Hacha become a chayiv. That's why actually Taisa says the Gersa not to have that benacha, which sounds like it just landed. No, it's talking about where he intended to throw it over here, so his machshava, like it's called, is mishavile makom. His intention makes it into a place, because he intended to, therefore, since he intended to throw it over here, even though it's not dalat fachim, he's still going to be chayiv. And the Gemara brings a raya. Amra Bibi Bar Abaya. So Zavanan Amtinin says, we also learned like this in the Mishnah, Masechtas Krisis. It says, Yesh eichel achila achas. You could have a person that could eat one kezayis of food, v'chayv, which is the minimum measurement, like an olive-sized piece, v'chayv ala dat chatas, he could be liable for 4 korban chatois, and v'asham echad, and 1 korban asham. How so? Hatame, if he's tame, sha'achal chaylev, that is eating forbidden fats, v'hu naisa, and those fats are leftovers, min hamukdashim, from a carbon, and he's eating it b'yom kippurim, he's michayv for 4 chatois and 1 asham. How so? Rashi explains. The 4 chatois is because he's eating chaylev, which are forbidden fats. That's also nicer. It's any leftover from a carbon is called nicer, which is forbidden to be eaten. And he's also eating it on Yom Kippurim, which you're not allowed to eat Yom Kippurim. And he's also a tummy person that's eating kachim. A tummy person not allowed to eat kachim. So that's another chatos. Those are the 4 chatois. And there's one more asham, which is called asham me'ilois, because even a kohen is considered a zar to the imurim. You're not allowed to eat the imurim, the fats. The fats are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach. So that's an asham for that. So you could be chayiv 4 chatois and 1 asham for eating 1 kizayis. Now Remeir, he adds on that actually you could be liable for 1 more. It says afim hoysa Shabbos. It says if it was Shabbos, v'tzi b'piv, and as he's eating this kizayis, he was carrying it outside with his mouth. Then the chayiv is going to be chayiv. Now, why do you need it to be Shabbos? What's with the fact that Yom Kippurim? So Rashi says no. In Yom Kippurim, you're not going to be chayiv for haitzah because the halach is ein erev haitzah Yom Kippurim. This Tana holds that there's no halach of carrying on Yom Kippurim, which Taisa actually disagrees. Says that's actually not the conclusion that the Gemara increases. He says the Gemara rejects that interpretation, and the Gemara there says actually why do we say Shabbos? It's just to say another liability. So I Yom Kippurim we have for carrying on Shabbos. But be that as a man, Amrullah, they said to Remeir, they said no, Einim min Hashem. That chatas is not because of eating. That's because of carrying. That's not. If we're trying to add on, say how many liabilities you give one act of eating. And the fact that you happen to be carrying as you're eating wouldn't be counted. We're trying to. You could also be punching someone in the elbow when you walk. We're trying to say for the act of eating, therefore they don't count it as another one. But one thing says the Gemara, but v'amai, why you chayiv, at least according to everyone, for carrying when it's in the mouth? But ha'ein derech haitzah b'kach. That's not the normal way of carrying through in the mouth. How could you be chayiv haitzah for carrying something in the mouth? Elo rather says the Gemara, this is the point we're trying to prove. Kiva in the kamachavin, since you're intending to do this by carrying in your mouth, so Machshavta, his thought that he needs to eat it as he's walking, and he's making it significant to carry in his mouth, Meshavile Makom, that's going to make it into a designated place that it is its normal way because you're intending to do that. And that's what we're saying, the right to what we said before. Since you're intending for it to land into the oven, into the dog's mouth, your thought process makes it into a significant way, even though it's not dal, you're giving it that significance because you're intending for it, as we learn different halachas in this Masechta regarding, let's say, the minimum shir b'tzah. It's not really something significant, but you are matzniya, you stored it for that, for you it's significant, that gives it a significance, and therefore, that's why you're going to be chayim, even if it lands in the mouth of a dog or in the fire, whereas in our Mishnah, which said you're going to be pater, is when you did not have that in mind. We shall return to the 11th parak of the Shabbos parak Chazor, which, as the title of the parak spoke about, primarily about throwing something on Shabbos in the street regarding Malacha B'Tzah. With that we begin the 12th parak Habayna, which is really the halfway, after this parak, but there's 24 parakim. So at the Shabbos, we start now the 12th parak Habayna. Says the Mishnah. We continue with the Lamates Malachas, which Taisa actually asks as a question. He doesn't know why Baina building is coming after the Malacha of Zrika and Eitzah, of throwing, and it's not like in the order of Lamates Malachas. But either as it may, we continue with the Malachas here in this parak, which we're going to go to many different malachas in this parak. Says the Mishnah Habayna, the malacha of building that was said regarding the Lamates Malachas. Kama yivna b'yechayim. How much do you need to build to be liable for building? Says the Mishnah Habayna Kol, even if you build just a small amount, you're going to be chayiv for the malacha of building. And it says the Mishnah, there's a few other things that's also going to be chayev for a kolshu. Lamasasis, someone chisels, which he squares off the stone and he fixes it, which Rashi says it all depends on the place and the location. Some place they smooth it out, some place they make certain grooves, as it's done in the Germanic lands. But be that as it may, for chiseling the stone, you can be chayev on Shabbos, as we'll see in the Gemara, what's the liability of mesasis. V'amakve patish, which literally means to say that he hits it with a hammer, which Rashi explains, that's also one of the lamates malachas, which is when you cut the stone from the bedrock, which is after that you quarry the stone from the mountain and you separate it a little bit, then you give one big clop with the hammer, one big bang, and it gets detached from the mountain. That's the end of the quarrying, and anytime you finish off something on Shabbos, that's the malacha makra patish, and that's a derivative of that malacha. So makra patish is you give that bang with the hammer, now it just you finally finish disconnecting it. That is the what it means hitting with the hammer. Which Taisa disagrees. He says, how can you say that? In the Mishkan, they didn't build with stone. So the Tana wouldn't say something that doesn't have relevancy into the Mishkan. So rather the Reed brings the makra patish, which is more well known, is that it's the last bang on the vessel when you're finishing it off. When you're giving the last clap, when you're giving the last, you're middle of making something and you bang, the last hit, that finished it off, that's what makra patish means. That's the Gemara malacha. That's as we commonly know this malacha of Shabbos of makra patish. So too, b'matzid, someone takes a sledgehammer or hakoydech, he drills a hole in the wall of wood or of stone. So kolshu, even a minute amount, and that's going on all of them. On mesasis, on makra patish, on matzid, on the koydech, all of these, even a minute amount, chayv, you're going to be liable. Says the Mishnah Zakal, this is the rule. Kalaisa malacha, if someone's doing a malacha, malachtim is kayemis, and what he's doing is going to last, meaning that those who keep it as he just did it, and they don't add on anything more, b'Shabbos, if he does this on Shabbos, it's not that it has to last on Shabbos. If he does something that it generally lasts, and he's doing this activity on Shabbos, chayav, he's going to be chayav. Now, Shimon he adds on one more case. He says, "Afa makka b'kurnis al hasadin b'shas malacha." If someone hits with the hammer on the anvil during the work, chayav is going to be liable. Because it's like as if he's also fixing what he's working on. Meaning, as Rashi explains, even though he's not even hitting on what he's working on, he's hitting the anvil. The Gemara is going to explain why is that considered as if he's fixing what he's working on, and therefore to be chayiv for hitting the hammer on the anvil. Why would that be a malacha? What are you doing if you're not even hitting the thing you're working on by hitting the anvil? Why would that be malacha? That's like kimasaka malacha, and therefore you'd be chayiv. But now the Gemara goes first, explains the opening halacha about Mishnah. We said if you build even kol shuv in minute amount, then you can be chayiv. Says Gemara, lamai chazir. For what is that fit by building a small amount? Which Shais explains specifically over here. The Gemara has to explain that where do we find such a parallel in the Mishkan? Because you're right, building just a minute amount really is not significant. So we have to find a parallel, a source in the Mishkan that even a small amount was considered significant. Because in contrast, let's say when we say you carry out itron or a pepper, we said Michayev even a minute amount, that's logical where you Michayev because it's significant. We said for the bad breath or whatever it is that it works for you, so we know a minute amount you Michayev. But here building, it's not significant building a minute amount. So that's what we're asking, where do we find the Mishkan that a minute amount was done to show that building even a minute amount, a kosher, is going to be chai. So they want to suggest three different answers for what's the significance of a minute amount. Amr B'Yomi, he says, Shekin Ani, we find a poor person, Chayfa Guma, will dig a pit, let's nearby to store away his pennies, his coins. And that's a little building that's building that pit, where we find a parallel in the Mishkan. Shekin Toifa Yuri is because those who would stitch the curtains, Chayfa and Guma, they would also dig a pit, let's nearby Machten, to store away their needles. Therefore, that's the first interpretation of the Gemara, that just like a poor person will dig a little pit, Bainu Kolshu, to put away his coins, they would also dig a small little pit in the midbar to hide their sewing needles. Now, Amabai says no. Keeping the Mishtachi, since it would rust, Loy Abdi Hachi, they would not do that. And that can't be that they would hide their needles in the ground. Or rather, it gives the second interpretation. A poor person makes a stand for a small little stove, to go ahead and put a small little pot. Because a poor person who doesn't have so much money, he makes a small little stand for that little pot. The Mishkan, which we have the parallel in the Mishkan. Mavashli Samanim, those who would cook the herbs, Litzva Yurias, to dye the curtains, Shechasu Malachton, where they didn't get the full dyeing of the curtain. It's still missing a little bit. So you have to go ahead and recook just a small little amount of herbs to dye it a little bit. So Eisen Bitputik Yirgitana, they would make a small little stand, Lishpus Yirgitana, to have it in a small little pot. So that's a boina kosher. You would make this tiny little stand with a tiny little pot, a boina kosher. You find that they did that in the Mishkan because they had this huge curtain. They didn't have to make. They only had a small spot that missed some dye. So you would only have to have a small little pot that you make a small little stand. That's the boina kosher. And that Rav Yaakov, he rejects that too. He says no. In Anis b'makom shiur. So there's no poverty in a place of opulence. In the Mishkan, they don't do things just so that you could miss it a little bit and not get it. They do it forever. They're doing a kiddush. They didn't do it with the works. In Anis b'makom shiur, same here. It's not possible that they had to make this small little stand for the small little pot. They never undid or underdid those dyeing. El rather gives a third interpretation. Shekain balabais, we find by a homeowner. Sheshli neked bibirasi. If he has a hole in his beautiful mansion where he eats and he sleeps, he's very particular about a small little hole. If it's disgusting, so he stuffs it up with clay. Doesn't want to have his beautiful house to have that hole. We find the same thing by the Mishkan. Shekain kerish, where the planks of the Mishkan shenova boy darna. If a worm would go ahead and make a hole in one of the planks, so they would pour inside of it lead, and close it up. So that's where we find in the Mishkan that a boina kosher, yes, building just a small amount, they would do in such a case. Therefore, since we find a precedent for that, that's why we say in the Mishnah, a boina kosher is going to be chayv. Now,
sometimes it's used like that, and sometimes it's Einaniyas Bokim Ashiras. And usually the Einaniyas is by Klisharas. Klisharas, you say Einaniyas Bokim Ashiras. Well, when it's not, then you say Akash Baruch Chasam L'Mishn Yisrael, like the Kalfi, the shovel, different things. So here, this is not a Klisharas.
I mean, alt Klisharis is the significant has to be Klisharis or like a,
right.
Or not a.
As you say, Einaniyas Bokim Ashiras. But anything else, Akash Baruch Chasam L'Mishn Yisrael.
Yeah, one way of explaining that contradiction is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself wouldn't, but the Jewish people would. It means that Hashem doesn't want to impose upon us, but when we do it right. Right? The Baal Simcha is not going to, he's the guy who's the caterer is going to go ahead and he's doing berevach. I'm saying, they're not going to. The one who's making the order is going to say, it's okay. I don't want whoever's the Baal Simcha, the son-in-law, he's going to say that whatever. It's okay. He's not going to impose upon. But the Shveh, he's going to give Kiyad al-Melech. So I'm saying it's the Rabbi Shloimy. He doesn't impose. He doesn't want to. He's Chasam L'Man Shal Yisrael. Doesn't want to impose upon them. But the Jewish people do. They do it right in Anis b'makom shiur, and therefore, if they're going to do it, that's what he's saying. It doesn't make sense to say that they would underdo the dye. When they're doing it, they're going to make sure they cover all the bases. It's not really possible that the painter came with too little paint. This painter, he comes with truckloads. He's getting the job done the right way. He's not coming with like a few pots and saying, I didn't get enough, so I'm going back to Home Depot. You know what I'm saying? The Jewish people, the Anis b'makom shiur, that's the pashtus in regards to how they're going to do it, and therefore that's why the Gemara rejected that interpretation. Now the Gemara continues with a related discussion regarding building on Shabbos. Amar Shmuel. As we'll see, there's going to be 3 different stages in building that's going to have a halachic significance. Shmuel says the following halachic. Says, if someone goes and he places down the bottom stone, the cornerstone, bottom stone, and he moves it until it's settled in the ground very well, because he has to make sure that all the stones are going to be on top of that one. So when he just positions the stone, chayiv is going to be chayiv. Even if he didn't put any cement, it's going to be considered building a kolshu, because there are those who don't put cement on the bottom stone, and therefore it's going to be chayiv. I think it says Nesa. The Gemara asks in the following brayso, echad noisnes evan. We say that if one person's putting the stone, the echad noisnes atit, the other one puts the cement. Ha noisnes atit chayiv. The one puts the lime, one puts the clay. He's going to be chayiv. But the one who puts the stone, he's going to be pater. That rejects Shmuel, who said just put in the stone without any clay, is going to be chayiv. Says according to your reasoning, aim a sefer. Look at the sefer, which says not that the gears of BC Aimer, but be that as it may, Rabbi he says, no, he says he says even if someone just lifted up the stone and he put on a row of stones on the wall, chayiv is going to be chayiv. Says the Gemara, you see that even just placing without even positioning, which is even more than Shmuel, you're going to be chayiv. How are you asking on Shmuel by saying that, oh, you see, you need to put clay? How are you just for positioning the stone? You're asking about positioning? Something even less than positioning, which is just placing your chayv. How could you ask on positioning? So El Rav, the Gemara says, no, it's not a difficulty. And actually, there's three different stages. Tlosa binyani have. There's three stages in building. You have Tata, the bottom, Metzia, the middle, the Ilan, the top, as the Gemara explains. Tata, you have on the bottom, which is the foundation of the wall on the bottom, which you put all the stones on top of that one. That you put on the ground without any cement. That just needs positioning and earth. Because it's just to make the positioning, to make sure that it's straight, that it shouldn't veer on either side. And you put some earth to support it. That's where Shmuel said his teaching, that yes, that just putting it down and positioning would be chayiv. Metzia, the middle stones, is which the Bryce is talking about. Boina metina. No, the whole building of the wall, from the bottom row up until the top row, needs clay, cement, also besides positioning. That's what he said. You're only the one Hanais Nesatitz can be chayiv. Eloi, the top row of the wall, which there's no more stones on top of that, then you're not concerned if it veers to either side because nothing's weighing down on it. That's where Rabbi Yisrael said that just putting it down is going to be chayiv, and therefore it's not a contradiction. One was the case of the Brisa, which is the Metzia. Shmuel was talking about the bottom one, and Rabbi Yisrael talking about the top one, and therefore that explains because there's three different stages in the wall which require different things. This requires positioning and wedging. This requires also clay, and this requires just placing on the top. That's why we have these three different cases. Now we said in the Mishnah, the next case in the Mishnah, we said a boina kol shul is going to be chayiv. We said v'amasasas, someone chisels the stone, he's going to be chayiv. Says and we had the case of hamakav epatas v'matzid, striking the final blow, and akedech, the one who's drilling. We said kol shul is going to be chayiv. So we have three cases that is a machlekes Rav and Shmuel, what the liability is. Says the Gemara, masasas mishum ma'im chayiv. What is the liability for chiseling? What telada of which av malach is it going to be? So Rambam says Mishum Paina. He says chiseling is building. Rishmulam Mishum Makar Patish. He says no, it's because of finishing off the malacha. Because where you carved out in that stone, where you chiseled out, you're not going to chisel out anymore. That's the end of what you were chiseling out over there. That's Makar Patish. That's the finishing off that you're doing. So that's machlekes Rabbi Shmuel. Is that building or is it Makar Patish? Similarly, we have another machlekes. So Isa Nekev. If someone makes a hole, belul shatan in a chicken coop.
Isn't only chayiv the last time he chisels, or from the beginning?
Yeah, it's the last time that he chiseled.
The last
Yeah, where you chiseled, in other words, the way the simple
If you
understanding
chisel
is
for half hour is not chayiv.
right. It's where you chisel. Generally, that's where you're not going to chisel anymore. That's where Rashi says, and then that's going to be makar with patish. Now, another case is the chicken coop, where you have the chicken made out of wood, and it's enclosed. So he makes a hole that all that filthy smell of the chicken coop should come out and not be harmful for the chickens. So again, you have machlekes. Rava Mishum Bain. This says that's building, making the hole. Shmuel Mishum Makar Patish says no, because you're finishing it off, because that's the finishing off of the chicken coop. And anything that's finishing off something is chayiv b'shem Makar Patish, like we learned in Perikol Golda of Ayin Hema Beis. A third case is Ayil Shufsa, which Rashi explains it is that he wedges in a peg, small little peg, he sticks into where the handle of the hoe is, where you stick it into the hoe itself. So to make sure that's wedged in, that it shouldn't come out, he sticks it in bikufina, in the hole of the mora of the top of the hoe. So he sticks in a wedge, a small peg, to wedge it in. Here also we have machlekes. Rabba Mishum Baina. Rav says you can be chayiv because of Baina, which Rashi says, Taisa says that that's, although we generally say there's no binyan b'kelim, how is saying that it's going to be binyan? So the Re says that's only when it's not a bona fide building, but a binyan gomer could be chayiv even by kelim, and that's Taisa's shita. But again, it's where you're strengthening it and making it into a full-fledged thing. But when we always say in binyan b'kelim is when it's not such a significant act. But by land, it's always, but you could be chayiv, says Taisa, that's the Rav saying you can be chayiv for building. Shmuel says Mishum Makar Patish because of Makar Patish. So essentially we have three cases: chiseling a stone, making an ear hole in the chicken coop, and putting in a peg to solidify the handle of a hole. The Rav says they're going to be chayiv Mishum Bain. Shmuel says Mishum Makar Patish. Says the Gemara B'Tzricha, we have to say all three cases the machlekes. Why don't you just say them once? Says the Gemara because the Yashmin Kamai said we only said the first case by Masasas. That's what Rav says, that it's going to be because of building Mishum Derech B'Inyan B'Kach. It's normal to build like that by chiseling a stone. By making a hole in the chicken coop, the in derech b'inyan b'kach is not the way of building. In Maidli Shmuel, I would say that he agrees to Shmuel, which is because Shmuel does not consider that building, which the Re explains in Taisis, because it's not considered a Pesach. Why is it not considered a building? Because an opening is only when it's meant to take in and take out. Here it's only meant to take out the bad air, not to take in. So therefore, you would say he agrees to Shmuel, therefore you have to say this case of the chicken coop too. Now, v'ish min baha, have you only said the case of making the hole in the chicken coop? Ba'akam Rav, I would say that's what Rav says, mishum the dam and labinu, because at least that's somewhat similar to building, because the avdul avir, making it for ventilation, for airspace, which people do that in the house too, that you make ventilation too, and therefore that's why we make windows and types of skylights. But by putting the wedge, that peg into the handle of the hoe, that's not the normal way of building. Anyway, Lishma would say agrees to Shmuel, there's not going to be baina. They have to say even over there. Now, the Yeshmin Baha, had we only said the case then by the last case, by the hoe, which is the biggest Kiddush of Rab, that it's baina, fine. But Baha Kama Shmuel, I would say maybe only with there Shmuel says that if you warn them because of baina, you're not going to be chayv because that's not building. But by first two cases, in Moed Rab, I would say he would agree to Rab that it is baina, not just makab padish. So you have to say all three cases, machlekes Rab and Shmuel, if it's baina or makab padish. Now, related, the Gemara says, Baimane Rab Nasan Bar Oishim Rabbi Yechanan. It says, Mesasef Mishum Mai Mechayiv. He asked the same question to Rabbi Yechanan. What's the liability because of chiseling? So Achal Rabbi he made with his hand Mishum Makav Patish. That's because of Makav Patish. How do you do that? He took his fist and he banged it on his palm of his hand to show like a hammer hitting something. He was showing like Shmuel that it's because of Makav Patish. Says the Gemara. So now he asked a question on Shmuel and Rabbi Yechanan. But Vanatan, we learned in the Mishnah, it says Hamasasa, some chisel, Vahamakam Patish, says it's two different cases. How are you saying Masasa Makam Patish if it says it's two different cases, chiseling and hitting with the hammer? So that aim is saying, no, Hamasasis, which is Hamakam Patish. It's telling you the Masasis, which is liable because it's finishing off something, which is the chiseling, is going to be chayiv, even a minute amount. Tashma, the last part of the Gemara is, let's bring a raya from our Mishnah as we continue top of Kaf Gimel and Alf. The Mishnah says, Hakadeach Kolshu, but someone drills a little amount, chayiv is going to be liable. Now, every drilling, when you say kodeach, is to fill up the spot with, let's say, putting in a peg. If it's not to fill it up, that would be considered neikiv, making a hole. That's the difference between the word kodeach and neikiv. Now, we said if you drill a small amount, you can be chayiv. So the Gemara says, Bishlam, Rabbi, I understand according to Rabbi that he says that making a hole is baina seiro, so you're building at least a little bit. So even though you're going to end up filling it in, which is what kodeach is, but still it helps for the building when you're making a hole. So I understand you're chayiv for baina. Baina is not only when you finish. So Mechzi command the Charchursa because it looks like you're making a hole, Lebinyana for building. But El Shmuel, according to Shmuel, that he says that no, making a hole is not bainam. So I understand when you make a hole in the chicken coop, you could say with this makabah patish. But over here, where you're gonna close up, you're gonna put a peg in where you're drilling the hole because you want to hang something, let's say a coat rack. So then lav gmar malachu. So how you have kodeach for drilling a small amount? That's not the conclusion of your act. Says the Gemara, no, it is gmar malacha, it is makabah patish. What are we talking about in the Mishnah is the baze where he's making a hole, but to the parzla. He takes a long screw, makes a hole, he actually leaves that there to hang it on that screw. That's a drilling that you're also finishing it up with that because yes, it's meant to fill it up and you did it with that one act. You take the big screw and you have it hanging out. You're doing a gemar malacha with that drilling which is meant to complete it, and therefore it's not difficult on Shmuel and the Mishnah.
So what would be if he drills and it doesn't make it with a big long screw?
Right, then you wouldn't be chayiv.
According to Shmuel, you're not chayiv.
Right, exactly, because
so
it's not
about just regular drilling is not, even if it's a process, or as long as it's not enough to complete, it's not chayiv.
Right, if it's not the completion, it's not chayiv because it's not makabah patish.
When he drills a screw, there's never a hole.
What?
As the screw goes in, there's never a hole to begin with.
No, but I'm saying you generally take out the screw.
I'm saying when you go straight in with the screw, there's never a hole.
It's never a hole?
Because it gets filled up with a screw.
Yeah, but it's not staying there. It's not staying there.
Yeah.
But it's not staying there.
It's like
but it's not staying. But it's not staying there. That's the point. It's not the gemar malacha because it's not staying there. You take out the screw. Let's say afterwards, so it's going to be a hole.
You leave it for the hook.
If you leave it for the hook, that's the case.
You leave it for the hook.
Yes, exactly. Right, but you made a hole. And therefore you were makim a pot. It's not even the whole. It's not even the whole Shabbat. It's the fact that you finished off what you were going to do in the form of doing it a forbidden act on Shabbos. Some of the things we spoke about on this daf and Shabbos daf Kuf Beis. We spoke about throwing, and we said that if a person goes and he remembers after it left his hand, and we said that if someone else catches it or a dog or it got burned, it's going to be patur. So we said if you're throwing to make a chabura, the rule is it has to be the beginning and the end has to be b'shkaga. So the Gemara says that in the case of the Reish, it sounds like, but if it did land, you'd be chayiv. Wait a second, but you said he remembered. So that's not like it sounds like from the Sefer that says if you remember, you're going to be patur. And the Gemara rejects many different approaches, which I don't think we're going to go through right now because people are waiting. But basically, we rejected many different interpretations. We said, yeah, it's Tartik Ketani. He's talking about two different cases. Yes, either he remembered, or even if he didn't remember, but someone else caught it, either one is going to be Pater. So it's talking about two different cases. Or it's one case, but there are words missing. And which is, even if he remembers, but if it lands, so then he's going to be Chayiv. When did we say that? That's the important words, when he subsequently forgot. But if that's why it has to be someone else caught it. That's the Chiddush, that even if he remembered, it's not going to be significant. We also spoke about that if you do two amas by mistake, then b'mezid, then by mistake, so then it's a machlekes. And then we said that even according to one that says it's pater, it's even according to Gamliel, who generally holds that ein yedil lechatzi shiur, that it shouldn't interrupt. So why are you not chayiv? Because over there by writing, the Gemara at least was b'shegig. You wrote the first letter and the second letter were both b'shegig. Here the end was b'mezid because the last two amas, when you're walking 6 amas, here when you ended 4, it was b'mezid. So even Rabbi Gamliel would agree that you would be pater because it was not done the same from the shkag. And the same thing is according to the Mandam and the Zichai, it's even according to Rabban and the old Yeshidiyah, that where it's biyadei, that not to finish writing. So therefore it's like a new shkaga and not the end of the first one. Over here it's not biyadei because he explains the case of Zarek, like Rashi explains that they're not really disagreeing, they're both saying the same case. It's just one's Tomat Zrika, one's Tomat Maver, and therefore even Rabban would agree that you would be Chai. Then we said the halacha of Rabbah that says if you throw it and it lands in the mouth of a dog or a kivshin, you'd be chayiv. This is Ayah Mishnah said you pater. Here we're talking about where you were machaven, and we said so too in the Mishnah Masechtas Krisis, where we said that you could have that Remei was adding on haitzah. He says, but that's not the way of carrying it out. He says, yeah, but his machshav makes it into makim. Therefore, you see the machshav can make it into makim if you intended to land in the dog's mouth. We finished Hazarik. Keep strong. You see how excited it was. A starting paragraph, we say Yichayim Kolshu. Also, all these halachas, Mesas, Makar Patish, Matzit Kedech, the all Kolshu. According to Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan, you have to say Mesas and Makar Patish is the same halacha. And by Matzit and Kedech, also we just ended off saying, according to Shmuel, you have to say that it's a long nail. And that's going to be Makar Patish because it's Gemara Malacha, you leave it over there. Shmuel says also Makar Kornis on the side, and we'll see in the next stuff that's also going to be Chayim. The Gemara says, what's Bini Kolshu worthy for? So either it's because for a small little hole to put his prutas or to put the needles. The Gemara doesn't like that because it's going to rust. Or the small little stove because they didn't get all the dyes. The Gemara says, no, that's ein anis makor shears. Or that in the mansion you have a small little hole, you stuff it up. So too with the karashim as a worm, you close it up with lead. That's where you have a bini kolshu. Shmuel said, you mitzad be'evin, you can be chayiv, that's the bottom row. We said the Bryce was talking about the middle one, but that's you need to have the clay. And the top row, as Rabbi says, even just placing. Then Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, 3 different cases. Mesasis, also you're making a hole in the chicken coop, or when you put in for the handle, is that can be because of Makam Patish or because of burning the thing into any time for hosting.